Okay, all right. Are we ready, ladies, gentlemen, corner? Gavin. Gavin. Come on in. Okay. Hi, everybody. Well, technical difficulty there to start with. I neglected to print agendas as well. So, save paper. Yep, save paper. So we'll just put it up here in case anyone cares what we thought we were going to talk about. All right. Okay, so lots going on, lots to talk about. We're a little 15 minutes late or so, but we'll just get going and adjust as needed. We do have a social networking break for half hour scheduled in there, so we'll eat into that a little bit as well. I'm Erin Minster. I'm the technical coordinator for the Curry Soil and Water Conservation District. I'm currently the lead on the GAG meetings. Figure we just go around the room real quick. There's definitely some new faces in the room, so we'll just go around, name, affiliation, anything else you want to share, and I did me. So let's start with that.
Sure. So, program manager for.
I'm
Eric. I'm plant Andrew's noxious big short hair, who's watching.
Gabby, Brett, social resources technician for local enterprise. By saying, yeah, with Windward Gardens, part of the GAG group.
You're up.
Hi. I'm Leah. Yeah, I'm Leah. I'm the water center. I'm Katie Woodrum. I'm the conservation people in Austin, and have a Gorse program. My name is Alex Cook. I'm the revenue manager out of the
Jason Call, vegetation management coordinator for the Abandoned. Big Chapter, I'm the park manager for.
I'm Dana Nichols. I'm the neighbor.
Tyler Blanchett, Ocean Corps permit coordinator for State Farm. I'm Peter Van Ness. I'm with Agra Ag Drone Services.
Maria Nenzor. I'm the coastal shore specialist for Department of Land Development. I'm Photonoms. Yeah, the south for
Courtney.
Yeah, I'm Courtney Gattuso, and I'm the coordinator of the Western Invasives Network. And sorry I can't be there in person with you all, but thanks for letting me call in, Erin. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. Can you hear everybody okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
We may have missed one row.
Oh, yeah, still got more.
Web Pedersen, Oregon Department of Transportation, who's trained on this.
I'm Marie Simon, executive director at WOW. I'm Paula Thompson with Water Resources Alliance.
Sorry, didn't mean to forget you guys back there. It's been a little frazzled here to get started. Okay, so in a few minutes, we're going to have Celeste come up and do a grass seed presentation. But before we get started, I just felt like there's probably an acknowledgement needs to be made. We have a large fire burning next door to us. Doesn't appear to be a danger today, but you know, heads up on that. Evacuation routes are this door in case of tsunami. Go up the hill this way. Restrooms are back there. But you know, we have this large fire burning. A lot of the work we do is related to fuels and fire management work with Gorse. And you know, this place it's been weighing heavily on me when I was putting this agenda together. I was out of town. This fire got big. We got a lot of big things going on in the GAG. The Maui fires certainly brought things into perspective, much like the Camp Fire did several years ago. We've lost people. I carry that, and so I was hoping you guys could help bear witness to that today, and to know also that this place that we're sitting is a place where, you know, Indigenous lives were lost over the fight over resources, land, place, and you know, we really need to rectify some of those things. And, I'm probably not the best person to bring these messages, but it's just something that I felt like I needed to address some way. I could talk for a long time. I won't do that. But, it's important work we're doing. It's serious work, especially in light of the conditions we're facing right now. This week is going to be difficult, I think, for the fire management. I wish the best for this community. And in light of, the lives lost in Maui, which is a count of 97 right now, 85 people were lost in Paradise and Camp Fire, and countless others. So if we could just have a moment of silence to kind of ground ourselves in the work we're doing today, we will get to the presentation after that. So we'll just take a minute. Thank you. Apologies for the tears. All right, Celeste, are you ready? Yeah. Okay.
Sorry about these guys.
Yeah,
It's part of our show, but
they didn't hear me. Cheers.
Everybody, so again, my name is Celeste, and we take part of some natural resource specialist. So while Erin does that, can everybody hear me all right? I have to wear a mask. I have a immunocompromised person at home. So, again, I work with Oregon State Parks. I'm a natural resources specialist. Some of you may have known Sherry Miller. She decided to retire. So I'm working with the parks between Newport and the California Southern border, helping each park manage their natural resources. So I work with Nick, of course, on different projects on management. But one of the things that I've gotten really involved with in my 15 years working on this coast is native plant material. And so as I've been working more with Erin and Liza, we've started talking about revegetating after doing first. And native plant materials keep coming up. It's something that I'm very passionate about. And so I just want to share some information. The information that I'm sharing are not a recommendation. It's not direction from Oregon State Park. It's really just some information that I've gathered over I want. And you all can take it, use it, however you like. So revegetating after gorse treatment or after any kind of plant treatment is often just an afterthought. It's not really something that we often plan for. I think that we're really just focused on getting rid of the invasive plant. We're not really thinking about what we're going to do after that. And in a lot of cases, what we end up with is another invasive plant. We've left bare ground open and that's something else. So I'm going to start out just talking about gorse in general. When I was doing this presentation, I was getting kind of tied up into knots thinking about what level to present at, knowing there's some people that are like Ed, who's deep into the plant world, and then there's other people that probably are just at the grass wildflower stage of plants. And so hopefully I've met the middle, and really this is just the beginning of the conversation. I'm around at any point in time to talk about this more and get more into depth. And then also, once we're done talking, based on our conversation, y'all can have this PowerPoint slide and use it as a reference to the information that's helpful to you. So I'm really, like I mentioned, native plant materials are a big thing to me, but also ethnobotany as well. So whenever I'm working with a particular plant, I like to look up its traditional uses, maybe the cultural uses used by tribes, and also the folklore around it. And Gorse, as we know, is native to the British Isles. So in Ireland, we might call Gorse furs, or if you were in Scotland, you'd call it wind. And there's lots of stories. Gorse can either dispel evil or it can bring evil into your home. It's got all these different sides to it. But one of the stories that I thought was pretty interesting was about the goddess of winter. And in Celtic mythology, there's a goddess, and the winter goddess is Cailleach. And Cailleach works really hard when temperatures start to warm in the spring to stop winter from stopping. And so anytime, you know, a snowdrop or a primrose starts to open up its flower, she zaps it with her crossed hand. But one day she comes into a gorse plant, and the gorse plant is in full bloom. And no matter what power or curse or
Original gag member.
really gorse, nothing stops this plant from blooming. And so out of her frustration, she puts a curse on Gorse, saying that nothing will ever grow underneath its branch. And that's interesting because it's kind of true. You know, here we have Gorse, we just find a lot of bare soil. But there are some interesting things that Liza comes to, and some research that I think helps us out a little. Okay, go for it. So just some quick things about Gorse. I know a lot of you are old hands at Gorse, but maybe some are new too. So it grows like crazy. We know that if we do a mow treatment within 6 months, it's grown up about 2 feet and treat it with herbicide. So we know how fast it grows. It does flower all year long in its native range. In fact, there's a saying in Scotland to never kiss a loved one when Gorse is out. So you're safe. Of course, it's always blooming. One thing that's interesting about the winter flowering, though, is that seed pod abortion is higher than is expected, but still 43% of pods produced in winter viable seeds. That's impressive. There's an interesting thing you all know about Eliasm. It's a fleshy appendage that is on seeds. And a lot of our plants are vectored by ants. And they love that fleshy, fatty part that's on the outside of the seed, called an Eliasm, and Gorse has that. So we think that ants really distribute the seeds of the main vector, but also quail and other birds. And then seedling survival. There's a lot of evidence that shows that Gorse seedlings compete very poorly with pasture grass, which is good news to us, because a lot of times that's where we're removing Gorse. And then one thing, this is the thing that I was mentioning that Liza's found, is that they're finding there's a lot of work being done in New Zealand on Gorse, and when they removed the canopy of Gorse, or even if it starts to age out, the native seed bank is depleted. And so Liza found that at Coquille Point. Once she mowed all that Gorse out there and they did all the hand removal, this beautiful community of coastal prairie reestablished itself on its own. Revegetation wasn't really necessary. But there is that going for it. And then seed survival, there's of course, we all hear that really scary number, 70 years. That's on the Fire Effects Information Database for U.S. Fish, for the Forest Service. But a lot of references are saying 30 years or less, and in some cases they're finding that the seeds, and especially in moist soils, degrade quickly so that only 10% of this is left in the seed bank after maybe 10 years. And so that's another thing going for us. Maybe we can make some headway if we're using proper revegetation methods. So I'm going to step through a couple things. So when we're revegetating, there's lots of things that we can use to revegetate. First, why do we want to revegetate? Well, we just talked about that. We want to make sure that we don't leave bare ground open to exotic plants. But also we want to revegetate with native plants. And why is that important? In my view, revegetating with native plants is how we'll build resilient landscapes. So the primary community that really benefits from the native plant community, and the insect, the foundational force, directly or indirectly for the rest of the wildlife that depend on this coastal landscape. So if we're using native plants, then we're supporting those communities. But if biological diversity is not your thing, Erin started out with a very moving share about fires, and we know there's many studies that have shown that native plant community is more resilient to coastal erosion, fire, other disturbances than a non-native. There's some work that's being done down in Humboldt Bay by Andrea Pickert. She works with Fish and Wildlife Service. And they've been finding that the European beach grass dominated teams are eroding at a much faster rate than that are dominated by native. So there's lots of evidence out there that native plant communities benefit all coastal. And then we're going to take it a little step farther and say, well, if we're going to use native plants, we would want to use locally adapted or genetically appropriate plants. And what that's referring to is we might have a plant like, we'll talk about a grass, blue wild rye. Blue wild rye is a species that grows all throughout Oregon. You can find it over in Bend, you can find it here on the coast. But if we were to go by wild blue rye or blue wild rye, I always say wrong, in Bend, and then bring it over here to the coast and plant it at our site, it might not do as well than if we collected seed from the coast and used seed from a plant that had co-evolved with the climate and the environmental pressures here on the coast. So make sure that our revegetation projects are more successful if we use locally adapted plant materials, then we can increase that rate of success. But that's really challenging because I don't know how many people have tried this, but it's really hard to just go out and buy coastal grown or locally sourced plant material to do our work. There's lots of small efforts happening. Ed's working on his project at the Matson Nursery, so there's growing plants for 2 watersheds. The Understory Initiative is growing a lot of plant materials. Institute for Applied Ecology, I'll go through all these partners later, but there's not enough to supply all of our needs. So then we get into a bind. So is it okay then if we're using plants that are native to the coast, but maybe they're sourced from the valley? Is that all right? Those are all questions. So there's a few partners that I've been working with in the coast region to look at this a little bit more closely. We all feel a little bit hamstrung by this. We want to do good work. We want to create resilient landscapes, but we also know that we need to continue with forest treatments or whatever kind of treatment we're doing. We need to be able to revegetate our space. So different ways that people think about what's appropriate and what's locally sourced. One that you're probably really familiar with are transfer guidelines. That's usually what gardeners are using, and it's based on minimum and maximum temperatures. And so you could buy a plant in a nursery and it'll tell you if it's party to the zoning survey. And then one thing that native plant material growers often use is ecoregions. So this is the ecoregions of Oregon, and coast is ecoregion 1. You can see where we are, right in this area, how ecoregion 1 gets really skinny here because of the whole coming off the geological mix up, but it gets wider as we go up the coast. But it might be, I don't know if you can see the different shades within each ecoregion, but this is the ecoregion level 3 for the Rogue Valley, but then within that area are a bunch of different smaller regions. So you could be a splitter or a lumper. You could say, well, as long as it's on the coast, then it's okay. If I'm collecting seeds from Astoria, if I'm putting it at Gold Beach, we're good, right? It's a coastally source species. Some people aren't okay with that. Some people are. We've been working at this for so long, or I don't know if we're just getting worn out, but we've decided that ecoregion 1 is good enough. If you are working at a site like Crook Point, I work at Crook Point with Alex a lot, and it's a really special botanical place. Lots of endemic plants, really unique, very, very rare. We don't mess with large ecoregions. We either only collect from Crook Point or really close to Crook Point and really think it through with every single plant there. So it is by site specific. If you're in the middle of Bandon and you know that all the neighbors have gone out to the hardware store and they're buying wildflower seeds from who knows where, probably not as important that we're super, super careful on what genetics we're introducing at that site compared to a place like Crook Point. So I work with Ian Silver now. He's a conservation agronomist with NRCS up with Corvallis Native Plant Materials. And Ian is, well, I can't say enough good about him. He's great. And these are actually his slides. But he went into some literature reviews on different grass species, because we know that some species have really wide ecoregions for seed zones. And for instance, if we just think about conifers, Western red cedar has a really big beach zone. It's not just coastal, it actually goes all the way over to the east side of the coast range for its species. Whereas Doug fir might have a more restricted on the coast. So we looked into grass species, and because NRCS, I don't know if this is just for valid, but I guess there's a lot of studies that are unpublished that are in file drawers and things that just aren't out there accessible to everyone. And so he was able to look through all the materials they have and more research online, and found, for instance, for blue wild rice, it's a self-paying plant. So that means that it doesn't need another individual to pollinate itself and produce seed. And so even within a patch, say there was a patch of wild blue rye or blue wild rye right here, and then there was a patch out there in the parking lot. And the genetic diversity between this patch and the parking lot patch would be as different as if there was this patch and one in the Willamette Valley. There's so much diversity within every single patch of wild blue rye that thinking about capturing the genetics of just the coastal blue wild rye compared to the Willamette Valley wild blue rye doesn't really make sense. We'll go to the next one. Romer's fescue is another really common grass that we often use in our revegetation project. And this plant outcrosses, so this is like more like the human world. They need another individual to produce seed. But really what they're finding is that the Oregon coast populations and the Willamette Valley populations, because of their geographic separation, were separated by the authors only because of that. But genetically, they were so similar that if there wasn't already a bias, so those that work with agencies, especially the Forest Service or the BLM, there's been a long history of wanting to make sure that we're staying within our seed zone, especially by altitude. So you wouldn't want to collect seed from an estuarine area and take it up to a high mountain meadow. That's been a practice for a really long time. But we have a bias about that. And this is just showing that with fescue, Romer's fescue, there wasn't any genetic difference, but the authors still separate them geographically because that's how we think about these things, and we have a long history of this in our plant materials work. California brome in breed. There wasn't really any zone extent between species across Western Oregon. And then California outcrops and cells. And while the study was too limited, you can think of California oatgrass as being really similar to the blue wild rye, where because of its selfing mechanism, those that know oatgrass, there's a seed that happens out on its flowering bit, but there's also a seed that's produced inside of its stem, which is a really cool thing. If you ever find an oatgrass, is to open up, uncurl the stem, and you'll find this little seed, that's stem or seeds in there, and those are all cells. So you can think of the same thing, that the genetic diversity within that patch of oatgrass is just as different as another patch, far or close by. We can go to the next one. As I mentioned, seed zones for trees are often what we refer to because that's where most it's been done. So if you're working in native plant material, that's really all we have to go by. So we'll think about, okay, well, seed zones for the coast usually end at, the crest of this area, depending on what county you're in. So we all just kind of generalize. So that's probably the same for the grasses and forbs and other plants that we're working with as well. But we really just don't have a lot of information on it, especially about forbs and shrubs. Grasses are, because we use grasses a lot for a lot of different agricultural purposes, there is more information about grasses. But I think that the take-home message that Ian's trying to show, again, these have all been Ian's slides, is that there's so much variation in the way grasses and forbs and shrubs reproduce that we can't really make generalizations. So we could, like we just went through 4 really common grasses that we feel pretty confident after looking at the research that if you were buying that grass from the Willamette Valley and using it on the coast, you're probably checking off the box that you've covered the genetics on that because you know that there's not really that much to the population. But we can't really generalize. We can't say, okay, all grasses like that, because as you saw, that they all reproduce really differently. And then we can't say that about what's happening with wildflowers or other plants, taxonomic groups. So taking that all together, I've been chatting again, like I mentioned, with Erin and Liza about all of this, trying to figure out a way forward. There are several groups that are trying to meet this need and produce plant materials. There are local resources, so we do have sources, but based on all of this information that we've been looking at, I think really where we're at is that if you can, for grass species, and these are physical lists of species that I've ran by lots of different people that would be appropriate for using at a site here on the coast. These are all species that you can buy at, at a place in the Rogue Valley or in the Willamette Valley. And they're all species except for maybe the Pacific grass. They're all species that we assume have a wide species. We don't know for sure. Some of them, as I said, like I just presented, we have some information. So what we're thinking is the best approach for grasses in particular is if you're putting together a native grass mix like this, do what you can. It's pretty easy to collect grass seeds. Do what you can to collect some coastal grass seeds from nearby the site that you're working on, then mix that in whatever you're buying. There's, we're not going to be able to go buy 30 pounds of grass seeds around the coast, but if we get 30 pounds of grass seeds in the valley, and then we do our own collections, whether we're out training at youth crews or volunteer day, and we're grabbing some of that coastal genetics and mixing it in with our grass mixes. I think we're doing our best ecologically until we have that large access to large stores of locally produced seeds, which we are working on. And then this one I go back one. And then we've all been out to, and most of you have been out to Fullers where Sherry did her big project with Lamus mollis, that's the native new grass. And seeing how successful that can be, that's a plant that's readily accessible if you're working with sandy habitats, and it does really well with feeding the big kind of plants that are growing back. And if you can get approval, you can easily harvest the plant from human habitat where there's a lot of it. I guess this bit has a lot. That's where Sherry got her Gorse, and easily plant that at a site. And then I just want to touch on these two species right here, or it's not really a species, it's a brand. Green or Quick Guard. Does anybody use those two? These are commercially produced hybrids that are meant to be fast, round, catching, establishing plants that are grasses that will leak out over several years. The reality of that is they don't really go away, but they are sterile. And there's I don't know if anybody's familiar with Cascadia Furrios, they have a list, or there's been a conversation that's been going on for the last month about these two. And lots of folks that are working in really significant habitats that have a lot of biological significance are using these when they're doing big treatment. So whether or not they're trying to treat like rat tail fescue or something like velvet grass, and they're really doing things for people for the meadow. They're replanting with this until their perennial species, their native perennial species, have time to reestablish. That's one of the difficult things about the coast is our primary species in our native plant communities are perennial. We have a small component of, but the perennials take a while to get going, unless they're already there in the landscape. Grows pretty quickly after you use this one. So these are pretty good options. A lot of times as conservationists or habitat restoration ecologists, we steer away from something like that. But this might be a good solution if you have a site like we were talking about, Jason, who's really steep bluff sites where we're worried about them. These might be good solutions for putting in. In some cases, because the plants hang around a little bit longer than we want them to, you can actually spray them out later on as your perennials get going, because usually you're trying to encourage a perennial form, not a perennial graft. You can use the graft specific herbicide to take them out once you're ready. Now the next. So this list of plants would be pollinator species that you can introduce at your site. And these are all of the species that I could think about that might be found in the various habitats where we're treating. A lot of these species really difficult to find seed for, especially seeds that's from the coast. So we do not have any kind of information that talks about what the seed zones are for species. And, like I was mentioning, we're not working a lot of times in pristine areas. We're working in areas where there's already been a lot of different exotic plants that have been produced. And so, I would leave it up to you and your site, and the way you're managing your land, your best practices for your organization as to whether or not you feel like it's okay to go to the valley and buy some more sunshine seeds and put it on the coast. But I thought it might be helpful just to have a list of pollinator species that if you have the opportunity to propagate something or to collect seed for something, these would be great examples of that. And so I wanted to talk about some of the work that's being done on the coast that I mentioned already. So we have two key partnerships that have been up and running for a while now. So the Road Native Plant Partnership, the Understory Initiative leads that. They're doing great work, and Vanessa, probably all know Vanessa Roberts. Vanessa is a wonderful. She is producing a lot of native seed. Jason is one of her producers, starting to work on coastal seed production here. So she's got quite a few farmers that are working on this issue. And so I bought quite a bit of seed from her this year. And so if you are looking for native seed, especially some of the pollinators, check out the Road Native Plant. And as we looked on the ecoregion too, even you saw how far in the Road Valley ecoregion comes over to the coast on the south coast. And so even using plant material sourced from the Road Valley, I don't think it's way out of line. And then the Coastal Native Seed Partnership is led by the Institute for Applied Ecology, and same thing, I'm on the steering committee for that group, and those are the folks that I've been talking about. Ian's also on that committee that have been trying to figure this out. How do we make this easier for partners to get this work done and still try to revegetate the diverse species? And what we're leaning towards at this point now is putting together an erosion control mix, the native grass mix, and a native pollinator mix that would be available for partners to buy. And so we're feeling like that's maybe the direction that we could best serve the partners on the coast. We're going to start working towards that, so stay tuned. And then for seed producers, this is a list of folks that are well regarded. Silver Ball Seed Company has a lot of those factors that I mentioned. Same with Pacific Northwest Natives, and if you Google it, you have to type it in exactly like that. A lot of Northwest Native variations out there. Those two groups, you have to be careful though. One thing that you want when you're talking to a producer is to make sure you're talking about the same plant. A lot of taxonomy has changed, so your version of the plant might be different from theirs. And also some folks might think that, yeah, we got a great, I think Pacific Northwest Native has what they call a coastal mix. I think they actually call it a coastal mix. Sometimes it'll have seed from the Columbia. So just make sure that you're really talking to them and explaining what you're trying to do. And they'll definitely work with you. Just let them know that you're trying to get as close to the coast as possible. You can make that your best management practice, buying seed, get as close to the coast as possible. I think we'll all be doing good work. Northwest Meadowscapes is a great company. They're sponsored by or really respected by the Xerces Society, which to me is the place for, scientific research on pollinators and whatnot. And they're up in the Puget Sound area by Port Angeles, I guess. And they've got quite a options for wildflower mixed in the individual species. Coastal grown in that same ecoregion 1, different state, but better than buying from bench, right? Heritage seedlings, same thing. Linda Boyer leads that effort. If you talk to Linda, tell her what you're trying to do. She could definitely point you in the right direction. Steel Acres is another grower in the valley. Institute for Applied Ecology. The Understory Initiative too, I have them up higher, but they also have their farm they grow. And then Matson Nursery, I put that on their ed. I wasn't sure if you grew for other partners or all your effort is just going for Truth Watershed.
We do probably able limited, but ever expanding capacity.
Okay. So Ed would be a resource as well. And then I think I've covered everything else on there. Okay. Yep, that's it. So thank you. And I hope that, like I was mentioning, this is really the beginning of the conversation. It's a bit complicated, the whole topic is. It's complicated to revegetate, it's complicated to find a seed, all of that. And something that I'm deep into. So if you're interested in chatting about it or learning more, I'm happy to talk one-on-one or if it has any questions.
One of the things that we're trying to do is maybe aggregate multiple agencies that need seed mixture so that we can group by a whole bunch of it and get it for the South Coast that's kind of the same blend. So that we have more buying power for one thing, but also that we can get the attention of contract growers. So, for example, with the amount of acreage that we're doing right now with vegetation in a year's time, we're gonna need a boatload of seed. And if we can all get together, maybe we can buy thousands of pounds, not hundreds of pounds of seed and be able to something that works for everybody. Revegetation. So if anybody has any of those needs, contact Celeste or I about it. We're hot on the trail. We're putting together an agriculture that would help everybody cost wise as well as logistics wise. And maybe looking into the idea of cost share for people who want to revegetate that are private landowners, and they come to us as they do herbicides on the repair side of things and get seed. Yeah, she can pay for it. There you go.
Yeah,
All right, perfect. Keep talking to me.
On
ag, yeah.
Oh, and then here comes the ask.
And then it goes, yeah.
well, just, getting a grower from the valley interested in growing species like this would be able to happen just for ag land. That would be fine because then whatever extra is produced is open for purchase by any other person. So just getting someone interested in doing large grow outs is the big thing. Because one of the things we bump into right now, we can't really promise that 40 pounds of people who bought from that grower if they produce it. But it sounds like if we can actually get to the point where we have treatment lined up, right, we know that we're going to have things that mean it's set up to grow out.
The city of Dan is definitely gonna be ready.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's.
Any other thoughts about all that? Anyone else have a credit card? Anyone else volunteer for the non-ag land? Okay, didn't think so. Okay, so I think at this point we did have a few extras come in the room while that was happening. But Carrie, you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, I'm Carrie Frostel, Department of Agriculture Program. I was late because I was absent.
Yeah, that's right. And
Silver from the top.
thank you. So I think on the agenda, which I didn't print out for anyone, accidentally, I believe we have a social networking break. So yeah, we're a little early. We had some presentation time, but let's go ahead and take a break. We'll break till about 2:30. Introduce yourself to people you want to talk to, do those types of things, do snacks by Miss Liza in the back of the room. And we'll just kind of group back up here in about half an hour. But I feel like these are really important times to kind of get that little chatter out so we're not chasing each other out of the room at the end. So feel free to mingle.
That's what we did. We gave them.
Hi, Gabby.
I'm good. Hi, Gabby.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, That's the one thing.
You can all rest and know I did not report chaos with legacy.
Yeah.
Maybe another 5 minutes till I remember. Okay, again, thanks everyone for being here. Tyler Blanchett is next. He's gonna give a little presentation about Oregon Shores. And then, let's see, let me just over here. We got Tyler. Let me move some things around a little bit. Tyler is going to go next, and then we'll have Jessica. We'll have a little bit of time at the end. Liza has some things she'd like to share too. So I'm just going to give it over to Tyler here. And
Sorry that my PowerPoint didn't come through.
no, it's right here. Look
We'll
at
just-
this. PDF
Okay.
thinks it's a PowerPoint. I'm
Okay.
just going to let it pretend it's something else.
Oh, that'll be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. You tell me when you want to go.
Hey guys, my name's Tyler. I'm one of the permit reviewers for Oregon State Parks. So today I'm just here to kind of briefly give an overview about the Ocean Shore State Recreation Area and what that is. So,
Ooh, can you time out?
yep. Yeah.
Look at that. I apologize. I share this. Back to you.
Yep, great. So the Ocean Shore State Recreation Area was born in 1967 and commonly called the Beach Bill. OPRD was charged with the protection and preservation of recreation, scenic, natural, and other resource values. It originally wasn't really OPRD though, it was ODOT. And OPRD came along later. And basically, it is the extreme low tide, all the way up to the statutory vegetation line, or the line of upland vegetation from California all the way to Washington. So yeah, the beach bill gave authority to state parks to control and regulate activity on the ocean shore in order to promote the public health, safety, and welfare, to protect the state recreation areas, to protect the safety of the public using such areas, to preserve values adjacent to and adjoining such areas, to preserve the natural beauty of the ocean shore, and to preserve the public recreation. I got ahead of myself a little bit talking about low tide. So what is the Ocean Shore State Recreation Area? It is a combination of state ownership and a recreation easement across private and public ownership along the ocean shore. So it's a recreational easement and it does move. So some areas will actually accrete or build sand seaward and other places will erode. So in this example, you know, the ocean shore was this, and then as it eroded, it moved landward. So the ocean shore is defined by rule as the land lying between extreme low tide of the Pacific Ocean and the statutory vegetation line as described by ORS 390, or the line of established upland shore vegetation, whichever is farther inland. So we'll take a look at what that looks like in as an aerial. So here we have a situation where the statutory vegetation line is landward of the existing vegetation line. So in this situation, our easement, our recreational easement, extends to the statutory vegetation line as it was surveyed in the 60s. So then this area here is all the ocean shore. Then we have the reverse of that in this situation. So here, the statutory vegetation line as it was surveyed in the 60s, and then we've actually had erosion take place, which has moved state parks easement landward. So now you have the established upland vegetation moved more landward there. Common regulated activities is riprap, equipment construction, access ways, sand alteration, and stairways and things like that. That's some of our most common permits. Here we've got some dune management stuff going on here, vegetation removal, and more dune grading activities. And I think that's Cape Kiwanda, Pacific City. So beach construction standards. So this kind of rolls into our permitting and things like that, which I won't get too technical on today. But consideration is to be given to determine if the granting of such a permit would in any way be detrimental to the interest of the public, the safety of the public, preservation of the natural resource, scenic, recreational, and economic values, and all of that is defined in OAR. So here's a really great resource that DLCD rolled out about 2 years ago. The guidebook on erosion control practices of the Oregon coast. You guys don't have things like that too bad here. More on the mid and upper coast, though, they have a little bit more erosion issues. And it just that guidebook just kind of talks about land use and things like that. So as far as if you want to do work on the ocean shore, you basically submit to us a construction plan, tell us what you want to do, tell us you have a project need, and then we talk about ways that you can minimize those impacts. And one of those ways you can minimize those impacts is kind of giving us a map or something that shows your project area, and we'll talk about how you can, using closer access points instead of having to drive a long ways down the beach. And doing off-beach staging and things like that to get to the work site. This is actually for a revetment in Glen Eden Beach. You guys don't have too many of those down there. That's the example. So here we've got some construction impacts and permit compliance stuff going on. Here we have north-south travel has been severed because of the placement of material on the beach. So there's a riprap revetment here, bunch of grading and alteration has taken place here, and they've actually staged and stored material there on the beach, and now the tide has come up, it's actually interacting with that, and there's no way for the public to get around that. And then here we've got an access point being blocked by contractors. Generally, that's a no-no. This is actually a Oregon Coast Trail access point here. We really like to try to eliminate those types of situations if we can. That's the same thing. Have an access point blocked on the bottom right. So this is another thing we try to be mindful of. This doesn't look like that big of a deal operating out of a like out on the beach, but this is actually a plover nesting area, and this was done in the summertime when the birds are out there. So one of the reasons we'll ask a lot of the questions that we ask during the permit process is to protect some of those more sensitive species like ground nesting birds and things like that. Here we've got abandoned stockpiled waste. The beach is kind of washed around, and it's just not really great for recreation having some of that old fill material out there on the beach. It's pretty much a nuisance. And then here we've got staging, basically the same as that picture on the right, a little bit different material. And yeah, so this is the contacts. Me is the Ocean Shore Permit Coordinator, and then Kevin Herkamp, he is the Program Development, permits and things like that. And then you've got Laurel, she is the Resource Coordinator for plovers and natural resource stuff. And then for emergency permits, you can call that hotline there. And of course, you can always call Nick for anything local.
Emergency.
Yeah, non-emergency things, call Nick. But yeah, so that wow, super convenient. So anyway, I know my presentation was a little bit shorter than Celeste, but I can open it up for any questions about the ocean shore or anything like that.
What about like bays or like bays?
That's not the ocean shore. That would be DSL, I think. Is that right?
Or I see that, but I didn't.
Yeah. So it's just the extreme low tide to the vegetation line. So it's either the statutory vegetation line, which was a surveyed line in the 60s, or that existing upland vegetation. Yeah. So usually for like a river mouth or something, you'll see the surveyed line like jump straight, like north to south across river mouth. Yeah. So, any more questions? Yes, sir.
Many of the people here, trees law included, do work on eradicating of beach grass. I know up north, beach grass, European beach grass might be an effective tool to keep from beaches eroding. What's the Oregon Shore permit? Are there some policies concerning beach grass? I've heard that maybe there's mandated plantings of beach grass in areas of high erosion potential. Just want to get some clarification.
Yeah, so we would require revegetation, and we consider European beach grass acceptable.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Now that might not work with federal permits though, but for a state permit, no. That's
only
acceptable for
because
us.
there's other options to get a large amount.
Oh, okay, so
It's
it's
not because Oregon State Park. It's not really an option.
We don't want to
Thanks.
disturb colonies of American beach grass to the point, where we're not getting it where we can. However, we're finding that it's a better plant for what we want to do with the American beach grass than your beach grass. With very good for it.
interesting.
If we can get that going with a nursery stock or something, or get some built areas where we can get some property.
We have a,
Yeah.
we're working with the BLM on a propagation plot of I wasn't aware that, our native species was better in this case than your.
Yeah. Lots of
Yep.
research. Adjective and function.
And the tribe used to use it, but we get back.
Well, I think it would be good to try to keep out the fact that we're.
Yeah, let's,
Talk about that.
would you mind going back to like maybe the third slide?
I get that question a lot.
Yeah, thanks.
This one?
Yeah, let's use that one. All right, let me see the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one's probably a little bit easier. I think it's easy, well, it's easier for me to see. I don't know if it's easier for you guys. So without getting too much into real estate law, a lot of times properties along the coast have their deeded property ownership extends to, extends out here to the high tide line. That can change though. So if that makes sense, so as you have an erosion situation going on, your deeded property is actually shrinking. That makes sense to everybody. So it can create consternation when it comes to having surveys and things like that, because it will actually, like newer surveys will conflict with older information. So what we have here, and I mean, again, our easement is just a recreational easement, not too much different than like a utility easement or a gas line easement or whatever power line easement, except instead of for the purpose of conveying gas or power or telephone for recreation within that boundary. So a lot of people say, oh, well, state parks owns the beach. That's not true all the time. Most of the time, fee ownership will actually extend out onto the Ocean Shore State Recreation Area, but our easement will cut through private property. Celeste, I hope that answers your question a little bit better. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if it's polar beach.
Correct. So could you actually go to the other? No, it's the other construction planning. Yeah, because that one.
Oh, yeah, the one.
Yeah, it's the other way. Yep, that one. So here, this right here is actually Glen Eden Beach State Park. So our property actually extends, like State Park's property actually extends all the way, per surveys, extends out all the way out here onto the beach. And then it has like this little dog leg over here and cuts over actually in front of Worldmark Glen Eden's property. So in this case, there is fee title ownership of the beach in front of Glen Eden Beach State Park. However, once you get outside, that's not the case. Bandon would also, not Bandon, Bullards would also be the same, similar situation, where state parks would own it in fee title out there on the beach. But then here, for example, these tax lots, a lot of these folks here, they've got little slivers of their fee-owned title property that extends out onto the sandy beach.
So is that why the vegetation line ends at your property boundaries? Is the dashy line, there's not there.
Right. So in this situation, that's the line of established upland vegetation. So state parks jurisdiction, our recreational easement would extend all the way up to the top of their revetment. In that situation, all the way up to their yard.
The other line there, the longer dashy, is the statutory vegetation line?
This one right here?
Yeah.
No, that is a haul route. Sorry,
Oh.
I should have explained that better.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a haul route.
It says statutory.
Yeah, so this is the haul route, and then the statutory vegetation line is actually like, it's hard to see
It's
it, but
under
it's,
there.
yeah, it's up
Okay.
there. Yeah, it's
Okay.
fine.
All right. Yeah.
Sorry, this is not a great, this is not a great photo for that. Yes, ma'am.
So, your Ocean Shore XRA, that what it is?
Ocean Shore State Recreation Area, yep.
Okay. What does that mean? Sorry.
What,
What is the recreation? What is that?
so that is it is a recreational easement. So it is controlled by OPRD, so we treat it the same as it's a state park, the same as state park property. So it's no different than visiting any other state park. State park rules apply to that area,
Even though it may be in private ownership.
even though it's on private ownership, because it's an easement. It's an easement, so anything that is not recreation, that's where I come in, because we regulate anything that is not.
The staircase
Recreation.
to a beach.
Yep.
Things like that, fence or.
Yep.
or, stand fencing.
Sand fencing, non-recreational activities like weddings, driving on the beach, all that stuff. It's not like a traditional recreational activity. It's,
There's a lot of that down at Sunset City area, South Abandoned, like gray, like what we call gray area, kind of down in there where a lot of people think they own further than they have control over.
Yeah, could you address what are some sand alteration activities?
sand alteration activities.
Yeah.
So dune grading is a good example. Remedial grading is another example. Rhiannon, got anything?
Wall court, the whole spinnet wall court, and they're completely.
Yeah, mowing and brush removal. So any kind of manipulation of the dune.
A certain amount of sand, if it's over a certain charge of sand.
Yeah, that's right. So less than 50 cubic yards of material, we have a waiver process that basically avoids public review. So if you needed to move a small amount of material, like Nick, if you needed to get access, emergency access down to the beach is a good example. Hey, I need to push 25 yards of material out of the way. Okay, great.
So, and as part of the department, we have to work through that same process.
And that happens every year when the drip logs all come onto your parking lots and up on the South Jetty, for example. That's a time. Every winter.
And the reason for that, I mean, just to kind of play off of what Nick said, is for natural resource protection. I mean, again, kind of going back to my plover example with construction, a lot of folks might not know what plovers are. So you get guys that will just, oh, no big deal. I'll just push a little bit of that sand out over the top of the dune and right out there in the middle of Bay Shore. Well, really not a great idea. They're very sensitive to that kind of activity. Right.
Archaeal resources from folks that all around, so we want to right.
So would do-it-yourself pedestrian access that didn't require construction, considered sand alteration activity?
Wait, sorry.
If someone on their private property was not building a staircase, but establish a footpath.
Establish a footpath?
Yeah,
When you say establish a footpath, what do you mean?
or let's, just by walking repeatedly on it, create a path.
Walking repeatedly, no, I mean, that doesn't require a permit. I mean, gravel,
Brush clearing wood, but not.
brush cutting wood, it's, I mean, strictly prohibited in Division 4.
And that would include brush that's gorse.
The way the rule is written is any living vegetation cannot be cut, mutilated, anything like that. Sorry, I don't know the rules by heart.
Yeah.
But it's Division 21, and it specifically says any living vegetation cannot be cut or mutilated without OPRD, blah, 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 written approval.
Okay, so if we had like a patch of gorse right on the dunes, we would just need to, let you know the area and whatnot, and, we wouldn't be able to touch that gorse. Or what about spraying? That would be mutilation, wouldn't it? So,
Yes.
yeah.
So spraying would probably spraying would kind of get into that, like kind of a bit of a gray area, but yeah, I mean, the thought though is that you're gonna be impacting, that living vegetation, yeah, and I mean, I'm not an attorney, right? So I mean, the thought though is if you're doing something that's not a recreational activity on the ocean shore, then it requires state parks approval.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
So how does state parks do that is along the coast and then manage it like a state park? Which you don't get rid of.
Wait, I'm not sure I understand your
From
question.
the noxious weed. Wondering. If you manage the recreation area like you do, how do you that would affect the invasive you're talking about?
Like, for example, we have to keep noxious weeds off of the easements that the city right of ways are. We have to control invasive species. Does Ocean Shores have to control invasive species in the easement that they have all along the beach? Who's in charge of that? I mean,
Yes.
it's like, so we have a lot of gorse in between the statutory vegetation line and the upland, new upland vegetation line.
Impacting the
Yeah. I mean, whose responsibility is it to remove it in that area? If you have the easement
Right.
but there's another private property owner there.
Okay, so not a, Celeste or Nick, if either one of y'all want to jump in,
Yeah.
yeah, but
I'll get jump in.
Okay. Okay, well, that's what I was about to say, same here. So if you have fee title ownership of the property, that's yours, right? I might have an easement, I might have a recreational easement over your property. But ultimately, what's happening on your fee title property? That's your responsibility, right? So,
We have to
For ex-
notify you as an easement.
right, so for example, if she's your neighbor, right? She can't come over and cut your vegetation for you. You would be mad if she came over and
That
cut
was
you.
gorse.
She can- But if you came over and cut your rose bushes,
Right.
or started all of a sudden taking liberty to trim your apple trees, you would probably go out there and be like, whoa, this is my fee title property. You have control over that area. I just have State Parks just has a recreational easement, over that. So,
I've gone through this process.
Yeah.
Just a question about property. If we're the underlying property owner, we have to go through the permitting process. Done, right? But we're doing a restoration process. Would that make it would be, I think, a bunch of work. And it would be property owned every single. Now, it's pretty. Wants to see it, lots of. Answer that question. Parks wants our property.
thanks, Dave.
Is there a map that shows where the SRA is? Sounds like it's constantly changing, so just wondering, especially for property, how can they know it's that one?
Today, yeah.
Today,
Yeah.
yeah, so we have a map of the statutory vegetation line. We can share that with you guys. It's on our state GIS.
It sounds like that map
Available
is done.
public in the
Yeah.
GIS file.
Yeah, it's in it, that's right, Nick, it's in the RGIS file. I mean,
Layer for folks that are familiar with ArcGIS, which I know ArcGIS from college, so that's. I
It's a
see
year or
years
two.
through it, but for a regular property owner, probably. About.
But for a place like Bandon, where we have many property owners, How
On,
can
on
we
District
know?
3 alone is
So
90
How can
plus.
we know on a
Yeah.
permanent?
Easy to, if he was. Looking at these for your mapping.
I mean, we have our GIS, but I'm just wondering because it sounds like the statutory vegetation line isn't helpful. Because it's whatever is the more restricted.
You have to look at both. That's always the challenge, is
Yeah.
just whichever one
Yeah.
is further west.
So is there another map?
No, because it's identified by on site. You walk out there and you say, well, that's the established vegetation line. I mean, that's the thing, and it changes, it can literally change from day to day.
I think the 1960s map, L3, day and age, come on, it's old.
Yeah,
So I think I've heard that USGS is gonna update that.
I don't think they're working on it.
Okay, so we're stuck with the 1960s.
So how are we, so it's actually codified in statute.
Yeah, mine
It's
is
actually written in statute, so the legislature would have. And I'm sure they're not rushed over that one.
No.
So what are beach rangers doing? They're out taking across some of the recreation area. They've got GPS on their phone, they pull that up. We can look at it. Go around. All right, here's where the current vegetation line is, here's where the statutory. West, is this, or which one's further east, is this west? So, short thing, is east of that. That's basically, they have to go to each point. Basically.
Can I ask just one more follow-up? Who's responsible for making that determination? That's a state department or property owner, or is that?
We have 90 of them that have that question. We have 90 people who have that question. Where is?
I'm
the
trying to figure out, but I mean, if you don't know, I'm just kind
So-
of curious, like,
Yeah, so I'm gonna give the answer is, my question is, if okay jurisdiction is to the line of vegetation, which was where it was defined, the jurisdiction is the ocean shore, correct, so the beach. So does the easement stop at the vegetation, or does it include the front line vegetation? Because if it's outside the jurisdiction, if you're just only the beach, why do they need permits to work on the vegetation if you're just only the sand?
Right, so for example, it would be for access or travel down the beach. That's when you would trigger it. So if you were like, hey, I need to drive a Kubota UTV with a sprayer on it, and I need to, drive from point A to point B, then you're gonna need to drive a beach permit, and you can access.
But what if there's
The
a
upland property.
dune there that's established vegetation, we're also having to permit to drive over that to get to the other stuff we were trying to mow. So that's like right now, where the situation we have abandoned is we have a whole bunch of established dune between your line and the, where we're working that's privately owned, and yet to drive across that, we have to get permit. So it's kind of it's obviously a vegetation line driving.
Well, you don't have to drive to get to that vegetation that's by the sand. Walk over it, like spray it a little bit, because it's not on the ocean shore, it's not in your.
It's not activity in the ocean shore, it doesn't require a shore permit.
Well,
So we don't know where the line is. That's the problem.
Not ocean shore then.
Well, it can be if the statutory vegetation.
Right, but in
Yeah.
the event where it's eastward, it's just a
Right.
Where it's going east, that's the area. That it is not anything, that there's no PRD cycle.
If I understand correctly, because the line was drawn in 1967, there have been areas where the beach have moved either outwards or inwards. So therefore, let's say the beach was at this line, and then the whole beach moved out and it became vegetated on the west side of that established line in 1967. You'd have vegetation that would still be under the
Of the Rio State Parks, correct?
yeah, so then therefore, just because it's vegetated doesn't mean that it's outside of this Oregon State Park.
But
There's it's not west of the it's east of that line.
It's
Yeah.
east of the statutory and the actual vegetation.
Yeah,
It's not our.
yeah, it's on the upland property, and it's east of the SBL, and it's east of the existing vegetation. It's not on state, it's
So
not on
is
state
that
park.
line, that line, is it that line in the sand or in the horse bushes? Right. That's exactly what-
You're saying like, is it the literal plant itself? Like, I mean, is that what you're asking?
Like,
Or is
right,
it like just
is it the
before?
plant right here, or is it the sand that's next to the plant, that's your line?
Yeah.
Because if the plant, then yeah, you get permits, because you're jurisdiction.
I should be asking you this question, right? This question, I mean,
And then we need to bring common sense.
right,
Okay.
and then we break down.
With 90 landowners and a municipal oversight, yeah.
If you do an activity that's east or landward of the statutory vegetation line and the upland existing vegetation line, you don't need a state parks permit.
He says with absolute confidence.
Well, you can't tell what the vegetation line is, if it's a couple of blades of grass, out there, or is it a patch of gorse and invasive species that shouldn't be there?
So I think
You know.
that's the underlying question a little bit, is who is the person that say, this is the EUV, the established upland vegetation line? And is upland vegetation a specific, does it have specific language? Says like, these species are not upland vegetation, for example, or are, and who is the person, and I think that's where you're at, who is the person or persons that says, when we're now, east of the vegetation, statutory vegetation line, who says this is the edge of the existing upland vegetation? Who is that?
Line in the sand.
Who is that person? Who comes out that day and says, this is, these plants are, existing or established upland vegetation, and this is not? Who says that?
Well, you're working off a line. It's not an actual line, right? I mean, we're not looking at vegetation to determine where that spot is, what's on the pattern.
No, I think there's things we're putting out, and then there's.
I think, we want to know.
Well, in the case of Bannon, I don't think we're working with upland vegetation.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Or am I misunderstood? Like, my conversations with Kevin have really been about this statutory vegetation.
So generally, okay, generally, not in all cases, generally in a situation where you have erosion situation, we're talking established line of upland vegetation. In a situation where we have an accreting dune and it's marching, landward, whatever I'm trying to say, whatever, I lost my train of thought, okay? Seaward, thank you. We're accreting, so we're going towards the ocean, okay?
Yeah.
Y'all are getting me tripped up now. Okay, so where it's building, then in that situation, that's where it's gonna get more tricky, to answer your question. Because then you've gotta find that SVL. You've gotta find the SVL with like a survey of that. But here,
Yeah, one of those.
who's so, okay, let's not talk about Gorse for a second. Let's just talk about generally projects for state parks.
Yeah.
The onus is on the person that wants to propose the project. So you would give me your drawing, you would tell me what you want to do, and you would tell me, these are my property lines, this is the line of established upland vegetation, and on your survey drawing, you have to identify the SVL. So it's the onus is on the person that proposes.
So they're on you to verify it.
Yep.
So what you're saying, the property owner or their representative can say, this is where we think the established upland vegetation is.
Yeah.
And then you guys can refute that, or do you always accept that?
I could always refute it. I mean, if I thought, I mean,
Yeah.
if it seemed blatantly incorrect, yes, but again, going back to your point, we're gonna use common sense, right? I mean,
Okay.
unless it looks egregiously, if it seems egregiously wrong, then yeah, I'm not just gonna say, oh, and play possum and roll over and be
And
dead.
does existing upland vegetation encompass all plants?
No, all the bands. No, like if we see a little wispy little thing here, and then of course, I think he's saying the onus would be on whatever you put on that map. If you happen to sit there and want to verify it, say you're wrong. But it's gonna be what's on your map.
Okay, so it's person. their contractor or representative person, correct? That you say.
Or surveyor or somebody, yeah.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Surveyors can get to the statutory vegetation.
Mhm.
That's a thing. That's a,
Sounds like we should all have that app. We park rangers.
But if a property owner says that with vegetation, like, further west than maybe it actually is, the department has the ability to take it.
Right.
Which is fine.
Ultimately, the department does have the ability to count on site.
yeah.
Right.
And the question going forward will be, we mow the gorse in areas, moving vegetation, we are changing that. The eastern boundary, because in some cases it's sand gorse.
The hope would be as vegetation.
Yes.
No, that's not.
Yes.
Right? Because otherwise. Probably.
Right, well, that's what we're saying is we plan on treating up revegetation. I mean, from the city of Bandon's perspective, we're trying to get a larger scale picture of that versus scale version of that, so we kind of have an apple tree in principle over a large area. And it might be good for other agencies, like Curry Soil and Water or whoever that is managing BLM and Federal Fish and Wildlife and all those guys to have that conversation with Ocean Shores for the properties that they own, so that they can do their vegetation management with some certainty that they're not gonna get literally in the weeds with the wrong, with the wrong line. We have a lot more, where our authority is and where we need this, because that slows you down with the permit process, and it adds administration time to projects that we didn't think that there was gonna be. So that's and in our CS, you might run into that.
I had a question. I was just wondering, so the upland line, is it still, a lot of times you have the cliffs and you have the slopes, the line, so would your line be where the slopes is and stops where the cliff is, or would it stop where the slope or somewhere?
So my understanding of the rule is that if there is no vegetation on the slope face, but there is vegetation at the top of the bluff, then our jurisdiction goes to the top of the bluff. But if the slope face has vegetation on it, established vegetation.
Even if it's gorse.
Even if it's gorse, because going back to Division 21, any living vegetation period, hey, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like the rule, but it's the rule, okay?
Yeah.
Any living vegetation, okay, requires approval from state park. So if you want to cut it, mutilate it, trim it, uproot it, etc.
It depends if the slope is vegetation on it.
Yep.
But if it's vegetated, if it's already vegetated, it is the easternmost vegetation.
Yep.
So we could clear gorse on a vertical slope without a permit.
If you were east of the statutory vegetation line and east of the established vegetation line, yep, that's right.
Then that's the case.
That's the case.
That's the case in the village. You don't need to permit.
As long as you're outside of the Ocean Shore State Recreation Area.
And you can get there without going through it.
Which is the vegetation line. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you have to travel again.
Yeah.
But we can get you a driving beach permit for that. That's super easy.
Oh,
That
yeah.
sounded like a solution right there. Yeah. But I've never heard of it.
Well, it should be recorded.
And Tyler, yeah, and then friendly faces here.
I think we should spare Tyler. He's almost out of his ice cream.
Yeah.
So.
Sweating for kids like.
Favorable the way I see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, maybe I'll be fired in the morning.
You're gonna get a job with one of us, I'm pretty sure. Because you're gonna give me some Ocean Shores permits, and we don't even know how to navigate that. We gotta know where that east vegetation line is.
Yes, we need some specialists.
Yeah.
How do we give our, your rangers have, staff have, that, layer that we can have on our phone?
Yeah, it's a public layer. You can get it from the Oregon Geospatial Data, warehouse. I think it's also on Coastal Atlas. It is. Yes.
You can get a KMZ file of it too for Google.
Yeah, if you've never checked out Coastal Atlas, people, that's a great resource of all these very gray and weird lobbies that don't want to be put lines around. So, for all sorts of things.
That's
So,
where Aaron lives.
Coastal Atlas, so, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I know it's a big job, so are we good on that topic? Because we should probably move forward. Perfect. Anyone else?
Oh, I've got one more question.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. Woo. Feeling the heat. All right.
You're a brave soul, Governor. You're a
Yes.
brave soul.
All right. So it is 3:30. I would like Jessica to come up if she would, or just sit. You know, I'd just like you to introduce yourself and explain what Regional Solutions does, all that good stuff.
Sure, yeah, this is not gonna be nearly as exciting as the previous presentation. I'm new, I just started in June. Jessica LaBerge with the Governor's Office. Regional Solutions, on paper at least, is the economic and community development arm of the Governor's Office. So that means that I serve 5 counties, 35 cities, 7 ports, and 3 tribal nations. And I am a field representative essentially who's out trying to make projects happen. So I got introduced to Gorse, thank you, Marie, and a few other folks that mentioned it. And so I'm just here learning more about it and finding out how we can engage and help the needle. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. Yeah, which tribal nation? The Coochie, the Coquel, and the Cow Creek. Okay, yeah. I covered Douglas, Gooseberry, Jackson. Okay, yeah, so I'm the awesome little southwest corner of the state.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can travel together, I think.
Apparently, she's gonna give you a spray gun.
It's a big pickup though. It's got a spray tank.
Yeah. I tried, so 10 years ago, I think we're all aware that the project, Gorse Action, 10 years out or thereabouts. Is there something that's the next step?
Well, I'll take
Oh,
that. Can I take that?
yeah.
I'll take that, because I was gonna mention that. So,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
so yes, Gary's correct. It's been 10 years, since we decided, it's not been 10 since we had the declaration. That happened in 2018. Yeah, correct, 2019 maybe. Actually, it's probably 19, because I wasn't there. I was having a baby. So that's how I know that's when it was. You know, Jessica and I did talk about it. You know, it's probably, so we're really coming up on a 5-year, expert of the declaration. So, what I was talking to her about was it is probably time to look at that and to review it and to maybe update it. You know, different agencies have had, you know, really what it looks like. It's on the website if you want to find it. It's under the documents page on the Gorse section of the website. You know, the signature pages basically had agencies and other parties say what they would like to do for the Gorse Action Group. I think it's time to revisit it. I think that your office could help facilitate that situation, right? Yeah, correct, yes. So I think in our next meeting, that was gonna be something I was gonna put on the agenda, is to look at the declaration of cooperation and see what we can do to make it fresh and reasonable. And also with all the turnover and the different staff, some of you may not know that your agency signed it 5 years ago. So, you know, it's good to refresh it. So that is, yeah, I was gonna bring that up. How's that sound?
Which other projects are in Southwest? Or we were 10 years ago. Are there any other national?
You know, there was, there's only been 2 other coordinators, and then there was a durable gap in people covering the region during the last administration. So the projects that are currently on the list are a lot of like wastewater treatment facilities and city infrastructure, which don't all, I mean, they sort of align with the regional priorities, but I'd like to see a broader diversity of what we're talking about. So, I've been meeting with our other state agencies and looking at like getting updates on all those projects. Some of them are pretty stale and not happening now, so I'd like to refresh that with, and we haven't gotten our advisory together really in a few years. And so now we have a new governor, we've got all the regional solutions team staff. We're really looking at like across the state how we thoughtfully bring these groups back together and then also really align those priorities with regional opportunities to move the needle. So it's everything from seafood processing and offshore wind, to natural resource and noxious weeds and everything in between for drinking water, you know, sort of lots of different stuff, but it's for all. And I think we have capacity to add more projects.
Is there a way in which, we can be so, I mean, we're a project that, as you can tell, from the numbers, had a lot of, a lot of funding, lives, maybe around. So if there's a way in which we can, set that up in a way that's gonna help group and that's what started out as sort of a great conversation as like full on block and collaboration. A lot of money.
Yeah, I think it's a really important part of looking at all these projects that have been thrown on by different state agencies or partners. There's a lot that don't have a lot of local movement, and so sort of like, well, like if it's up to a few state agencies to drive the bus, it's probably not going to move real fast. But there's groups like this that are active and engaged. Like this feels like a real thing. So on a day-to-day basis, I can advocate grease the wheel for sort of like in the field grease. So
Send them to us. We're pretty greasy.
yeah. So and I can also help pull in other state agencies and connect with folks and be able to. So I'll leave. Or Aaron knows how to find me.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to be here.
Okay.
Let's see. Liza, we got some time for you. Not all the time in the world.
I know,
though,
I'm
with this.
speeding up.
Okay,
I'm gonna send around three, these are 3 letters I got all in one day, last week, made my day. But this is the letters of support from the tribe, Fish and Wildlife did a great job as well, and we had a private property owner, and this is all the stuff that we've been doing in City Abandoned. And just kind of want you to feel the glow here for a second, so people can check that out a little bit and just see. We also made a presentation, Jason's here, Jason, you want Jason was home with COVID, we went and made a presentation, Carrie and I did on his behalf. And he's all better now, swear to God, he's not giving all of us an illness. But I'm just gonna go through it really, really quick. Carrie, can I just go through your thing, just like, just 2 seconds, because it's repetitive stuff, but there's just some great pictures in there of some work that we've been doing in the donut hole and the voluntary compliance situation that we have going on, which is just literally amazing. Some of you may not know this, we had a nice little 3-acre fire next to the donut hole last week, barely set off by a mower at the church. And this was a little pocket of gorse at the church that we actually just had a conversation a week or so before that. We need to get the church to do their gorse clearing. Well, they're motivated now because they had a nice little 3-acre grass fire. So this is our presentation. Carrie went through, this was the city council. We updated them. She kind of explained the history. They should have known this, but we should kind of explain the history of the Gorse Action Group and our work with Gorse. And she was really gave a lot of credit to this group for being something that she works all around in the whole quarter of the state and even in the Oregon Department of Ag in a larger way. She's rarely found people like us all coordinated and collaborating together. And she just talked to the city council about how maybe they don't see that from the perspective of the state, that we are actually doing something amazing here. And the city abandoned is ground zero for Gorse, and we have taken responsibility for that. So one of the things that she said is really unique is that we've hired a vegetation management coordinator. Jason is doing an awesome job, and he has a variety of skills, mapping, deed research and all that kind of stuff, and he's working 2 days a week with Dana, and the city is putting assets there more in terms of just agreeing to the work that we're doing than they are. I don't know how much time you're spending, Dana, on Jason's, yeah. Jason's 100% devoted to this effort, so that is a very rare and unique situation, in a municipality for somebody to just be doing that. He's doing an awesome job. I've mentored a lot of people in Gorse in my day, and this young man is very smart. So, okay, keep going. So she talked about this is where we talked about what contributed to the district plan, for the city of Bandon, and the fire science thing is a huge piece of that. So that fire that we had this week could have been a whole different story if that had had a north wind and had been in the jetty. And we had the gorse there that we used to have. That could have burned the whole town down in about 10 minutes, about a year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So, then we talked about with them, just reassuring them that we are got our eye heavily on the eye of, the erosion issues. We're all over that. We have experience with it. There's a myriad of people here working on that. We're mindful of that every day. Also the minimalization of herbicides. I know we get a bad rap for our herbicide treatments and all that as a group, but the training that we're putting into herbicide managers, and we're looking for more applicators. So we're aggressively trying to put together more licensed applicators. And then of course our cultural sites driving all of our vote in Bandon, because that entire town, especially District 3 that we're working on, Districts 1 and 2 as well, are heavily loaded and sprinkled with cultural sites. So we're treating the entire area as a cultural site. And even inland, we will keep working on that. So we're using the tribe's cooperation and notification every step of the way on that. And we are really limited by what is okay to do there, because we are at such a large cultural site. That's very unique to the municipality and the city of Bandon. Really, a town with that much public ownership, state parks, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and municipal access, as well as 90 to 100 landowners that own property on a cultural site. This is really a difficult thing that we've taken on, and I think we're doing really well with that. And then all of the partners that we have, every single project that we've done in Bandon has needed 4 to 6 partners on it, not to mention the private landowner. So it's very heavily task, tools, and timelines. That's also a part of that. We're really working on the contractors and all that. So there's the December 7th, put on your list. On December 7th, we have an 8-hour class, gorse specific. We're working on vertical gorse, excavation, erosion, cultural sites, all of that, where it's very heavily, the 8 hours is very heavily leaning towards invasive weed species in difficult situations. So I gave them a background of what we're doing. Everybody knows that because you've been doing it. Keep going. And you have been doing it. And then we talked literally with the city of Bandon about what COVID-19 did with our outreach education piece of that. But what we've been amazed about, and I don't know, Jason, can you put a number on this? Voluntary compliance in a district plan. We have 7 districts in the district plan. Where do you think we are with voluntary compliance in the city? Have we
Oh boy, that would be hard to.
like 50% of our?
I would say
Community?
I would say a third. If I
Okay.
had to guess is.
Okay, so we're right now we're partway through our District 3, and we have a third of the gorse managed in the city voluntarily. We've not had any liens on anybody or dragged them into court.
Oh, that's your
in a way,
definition, voluntary. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I would say higher than that.
Yeah, so we're getting it done, and that's amazing, because some of these people have a lot of force. So, and then we've had some setbacks. The Coast Guard, we cannot pin the Coast Guard down, for example. They were in District 1, so we're having to work on this administration stuff on a longer range. Pacific View, we had the tribe owned it, but there was also a manager. We're running into that. In some cases, we have a local entity that has an interest in getting rid of the gorse, and then we have a management thing with motels and things like that. And there's a lot of back and forth, and those things take longer, so they're not necessarily getting done during the district, but they get resolved. We end up finding a solution to that. And then deed research, we just found out today that U.S. Fish and Wildlife does not own a piece of property that U.S. Fish and Wildlife owns. Whatever. The county owns some of the property that we want to give to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. The county is willing to do that. So we have a lot of this cross coordination going between these property owners. OPRD thinks they don't own something we think they own. We want them to own more stuff because it's within your vegetation line. So we're just gonna give it to you. You guys can write your own permits. So, and Jason has been digging deep on this. He's been going down some rabbit holes. And then the Land Conservation Development and Ocean Shores, they have a layer on us that we are trying to figure out what that moving target is so that we can comply. We don't know what it is yet, so we're still working on that. So these are the challenges that we're in right now. Okay, keep going. I'm going to show some quick pictures here. So we're talking about different types of equipment that we've been using, and we're both the big excavators and the skid steers are working. I gotta say, these skid steers are eating up the acres for us. So on flat ground, we're using a lot of those. What we're finding with the excavators is that we've got these steep slopes. We're having to mow up from the bottom and down from the top, and then we're doing hand work in this middle section. And that's going to be true pretty much of all the slopes that are over 6 feet in width. We're going to have to do a combination of those two. And then this is an example of donut hole. Not all of you are from the Bandon area, but we have an urban growth boundary pocket in the middle of a municipality that is a giant 100% monoculture of gorse in the center of our infrastructure and our community. So there's some very expensive homes and lots of schools and everything else that touch onto this. And if that goes, we all go. It's right in the middle of it. So it is our District 7, but here is, for example, 60 plus acres of mowing that has happened in the donut hole. And these pictures are taken right where this fire was last week. So this was right in that area, and 2-3 weeks ago, this is all Jason Bodewig at Uppercut. He was Jensen's Tree Service, he's now Uppercut. This is Jason's crew. They are hand clearing under all the trees, and the skid steer is doing the work and the flat. So, but that's 60 acres, then I think there's probably another 40 that are done. We've got about 100 acres, I would say, in the donut hole, which is District 7 done right now. Okay, so those are easy peasy. Now let's talk about some not so easy peasy ones. So this is at the Johnson Creek area, which Tokyo Watershed has had a piece of that. This is a cultural site area as well. The city owns the bottom of the flat part of this. And then there's a developer that owns that tree line area with a bunch of flat up there. And again, this is a project where we collaborated. The homeowners on all sides got involved in this. And we took out probably 12 acres of gorse on vertical slope right there. So there's a machine that did the work from the bottom and the top. And then you can see here, there's 200 man hours of hand cutting. And this is where they dump the debris. So he will come back now and mow this at that center line. And this is exactly what we're looking at going forward on these sloped areas that we're working on right now. The good news is that masticator is left behind 1 to 3 feet of crushed masticated vegetation that's erosion suppression as well as seed bank suppression on there, as well as nitrogen rich humus that will add back to the soil. So we got a good thing going on there, and this is a very impressive, very visible piece of work that was done, and nobody could figure out how to do it. And even the Best Western Hotel got involved because they let us walk right through the middle of their hotel with a big piece of equipment. All right, keep going. All right, so this is an example, and one of the letters that you have in that packet is from this gentleman right here who owns this home right here. He could not get to his gorse because he couldn't get there with machinery without an Ocean Shores permit and permission of the landowners and state parks and all that stuff, so he hand cut it. He said, no paperwork, I'll just start cutting it. So he did do that right around his property, but his property ends right here, and right here. And he has this big long driveway, and the fire department would not fight a fire in his $2 million house because they can't get there because it's all surrounded by gorse. So he got the neighbors organized with Jason, and this guy right here is at the entrance to his driveway. If that guy had gorse all the way up touching the bottom of that deck, with pampas grass or jabata grass right there. So he's a fire thing waiting to happen. And we had a good long meeting with Kevin standing right here looking at that piece of property covered in gorse and in jabata grass. And it's right next to a public walkway that's an access to the beach. So every fat tire bike and everything else that goes by there, walk right by this gorse. Any guy smoking a cigarette could have just flicked it underneath this guy's deck and he could have burned up. But he was keeping this guy. So imagine if there was a fire down here on the beach or something, and the fire department couldn't get down there, this guy would sue this guy because he was literally not allowing fire people to get there. So we aggregated 9 property owners, 10 property owners there, and got all the equipment together and all the hand crews together and did it all at once, using one place for access. So this is where this vegetation line comes into play. This is at the end of this guy's driveway. This is that public beach right there. This little patch of gorse right here requires an ocean shores permit, as far as we can tell. That's the only one we need, an ocean shores permit for. So we're trying to figure out how much paperwork you got to do if you got this. That's what we're trying to ascertain right now. We're working on that. So this is a good example of that vegetation line, for example, where we've got a pocket of gorse in there. We've got established vegetation. There's only one way in and one way out of that, but we need to get this out of here. Otherwise, we're going to lose an historic hotel right there on the bluff, not to mention if it goes inland, the Best Western Motel. So we have some issues like this that we're still working on. This is at the south end of District 3. And one more. This is the big one. This is the one that is going to definitely require some administration time and the tribe's cooperation on this, and we're notifying them right now. This is an area that we segmented out of the District 3. This is the Coquille Point project, which is completely revegetated itself and is stable. No erosion in this area. It was done in 2016, 2017. And this area to the south is primarily done at this point as far as gorse removal. And this section right here, we did a walkabout on the beach, and we determined that there's only about 25 or 30% gorse on that slope. So the good news is it's a difficult area to get to. It's a heavily cultural value there. It's got 40+ landowners that we have to deal with, and Oregon State Parks, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the county, and a whole bunch of other things going on with it. But we're going to pull that out. We're already working on it. And so District 3, this little zone, will probably go into District 4. District 4 is this area in here, and we got it. We got it figured out. We're at very little gorse there. So while Jason's working on the leftovers from District 3, we'll be whipping through District 4. So we're right on schedule there. You can see the property owner thing is kind of staggering in terms of Jason's job. Okay, this is a community of 2,500 people, and he has to literally make contact with every single person in the community about their invasive species. So that's a thing in itself. So kudos to this young man. He is blowing my mind.
You can also talk about how we have a county partner there.
Yes, we do have the county. So this is the Fish and Wildlife property Fish and Wildlife doesn't own right here. And here's this big chunk right here. Oregon State Park says that they don't own it, and we say that they do own it.
That's county.
And this is county. Yeah, this is the piece right here. This Oregon State Parks. This is county.
Yeah.
This piece here. Anybody want this? The county will give it to you. They don't want it. They sent us a forester down there. He was on the beach going, "Where's the trees?" Okay, I don't know what. He was like, "This is not my job." So the county owns 2 parcels, one here, one here. They'd like somebody else to take those over. They're happy to convey them to another public agency. If not, what would have to happen is that would have to be vacated, and all of these people would have to pick up that additional property. That's all that land use planning, permits, vacations, acquisitions, paperwork. So there goes your gorse money, there goes all your time and energy. So we're hoping that somebody will pick that up and manage it, because it looks to me like it's ocean. That can do. No, just saying, Tyler. You want it? We'll give it to you.
Thank you, Liza.
All right, there you go.
So, okay, everyone, we know we're got just a couple minutes left. We've got Courtney. There she is. Let me give you some screen sharing permission. So Courtney is the Western Invasives Network coordinator, and she wants to talk about a listserv. So currently I manage the Gmail account and send emails to everyone. And she's going to offer us a maybe possibly different solution. Okay, Courtney, you should be able to share now.
Yeah, I'm actually probably not even going to share my
okay.
screen just for yeah, but thank you. so yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're glitching. Why don't you want to just
Oh.
turn your video off and see if that helps? Okay,
Start talking.
go ahead.
Do you mute yourself too?
No.
Sometimes Zoom really doesn't like my microphone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, I've been in this role for about a year, and I've really been trying to brainstorm some ways that could help boost collaboration between the cooperative weed management areas, also known as CWMAs. I'm sure some of you are a part of some of them. So as well as the noxious weed groups that fall in the WIN network, and that includes GAG. So I noticed that many of the groups don't have email lists or listservs in place, and I figured I'd see which groups would be interested in having one and start to get those in place. So I was the coordinator of the 4-county and Columbia Gorge CWMAs for about 4 years, and I set up several listservs through Google Groups for those CWMAs, and they've been a really great service for all the partners to just share information with each other freely. So any member can post to everyone in the group without needing to go through the coordinator, so Erin in this case. And I've been creating even more Google groups recently, one for Midcoast CWMA, Klamath CWMA, and then I'm about to make one for Douglas County CWMA as well. So WIN would house the listserv, so I'd be the manager of the group, but I can make Erin or whoever else a co-manager alongside me, and then those managers can add new members to the group as needed. So the benefits of having a listserv, I'm sure many of you are already a part of other listservs, but in the case of Google Groups, all you would have to do is send an email to a single email address. So it'd look something like Gorse Action Group at googlegroups.com. And I just checked to see if that one's available, and it is. So that's good news. There's not another gag out there. And you won't need to CC or BCC a bunch of email addresses anymore, and it's much easier to get your announcements out to a wider audience. There's no bounce backs. Google filters all the inactive contacts, which is really nice. It's free, less work for your coordinator, also boosts virtual collaboration and information sharing, and members can unsubscribe themselves on their own terms. So again, it would reduce the workload for that manager or coordinator of the group. There are a couple downsides I just wanted to mention to set some realistic expectations. On really rare occurrences, some members might not be able to join just due to their organization's security settings. And I've only seen this happen once out of probably 1,000 partners. And that was because that organization recently got hacked. So hopefully it's a temporary issue that's going to resolve itself. And I'm crossing my fingers, but you also won't be able to see who's in the group unless you have a Gmail or Google account. There's a back-end form view where you can see members and see all the conversations in kind of a list view. But if you don't have a Google account, then you could just request the current list of partners to myself, or say if Erin's a co-manager, and then we can just send you the list that way. And sometimes people accidentally reply all to postings, which get sent to everyone. I'm sure you guys have seen that happen in other listservs when they just meant to reply to the sender. So it's just good to be mindful of your recipient box. If you reply all, it will populate the entire, or the Google group email address, which will go to everyone. But if you reply, then I'll just go to the sender. And to reduce spammers, I always make sure that it's invite only, because people like to spam groups and share some really inappropriate information. And so it'll be invite only. So they won't be able to directly add themselves, any new members. So they'd have to request to myself or say Erin to be added. So any manager can add new members to the group. So yeah, that's all I had. I just wanted to pitch the idea to all of you and see if it's something that you're interested in, and if so, I'd be happy to set up a Google Groups for GAG, but I'm open to your thoughts and I can answer any questions.
Hey, thank you, Courtney. Appreciate that. Sounds good to me as the person who manages the list.
It's getting cumbersome.
It's getting cumbersome, so it's probably something I'm going to consider rolling out. So If anyone feels differently, please just let me know. And, we're getting information. And then probably be like, well, do you want to do it? Kidding. But thank you, Courtney, for hanging in there for all that. Couple
Oh,
other
yeah, of
things. And Courtney's a great resource, you know, if we need her assistance for anything. So that's great. Also wanted to give a woot woot to the Highway 101 gorse removal treatment and demonstration. Yay. So these are hot off the presses-ish. I got a bunch of copies here if you want one. So this was Carrie's summary that she presented a couple meetings ago. I took it, and me and Marie Heppner from Samara Group took a bunch of pictures and kind of put it into this little 4-page, you know, successes and failures. This is really great. I really like it. I think it's really helpful. It's on the website, and there's paper copies for you guys, so you can grab one on your way out. Next meeting, I will probably just do like I normally do and doodle the steering committee. Yes, ma'am.
We have a new gentleman here that's a drone applicator.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to
Yeah.
him. So that area that I highlighted in the city of Bandon that has that, all that vertical slope right there, one of the treatment options that we're considering, we've been waiting for this to happen, and this man's going to get all this licensing to do this, is to be able to spray vertical bluffs with a drone. No manpower whatsoever. So it's a thing.
Yeah.
Got it.
So ODOT guy, Pete guy, people meet, right? So this is up and coming. So this is really cool that we potentially have this,
So
resource
Pete,
right
Art,
here.
you want to say something real quick?
Well, I'm excited to grow, with you guys. I'm hoping to do a demonstration at some point.
Okay.
I'm working through my licensing and all of that.
And it's a lot, it's
Yeah.
a lot.
It's a lot, and it's gonna be, but I think it's gonna offer a lot of different opportunities, such as, seeding projects. I can granular spread with my drone as well. So that will help, as well as the spraying. So, hopefully, a big drone, it can lift 124 pounds. Probably, right now, for all that I know, I'm the only big, T-40, that's the name of the drone flying on the, down here right now. So, we'll do a presentation for you guys.
Saw a lot of that drone stuff when I crossed the United States. It's amazing technology, and we're way overdue. It's a wonderful way with our difficult terrain that we have. It's a wonderful way to get her done.
You will need a bird certification if you're doing aerial oversight application.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You're gonna know you're doing it.
Yeah, so when you see it take off, I wish I could show you a video right now, but it's huge and it feels.
So it's not something you can miss.
No, it's not. If you're driving, you're gonna see it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Anyone else for the good of the order? Yes, Dana.
I just wanted to announce that the Gorse Block staff. And, we're thinking about a lot of information about the Gorse Fair. I'm talking to Aaron about the night before the festival. We're done a pub talk, conversation. If you're interested, I like to call it. That's a fun end. Yeah, Bernie.
Science club has been fun. I did the last one, yeah.
You have to be very thank you here, but they reprinted a lot of our resources like this that are on display. Yeah, that's pretty still our life left. But I had a huge box in my truck, all the color reprints.
Oh, perfect. Which will go on my way.
Okay. I'll take some
There you go.
too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but thanks for doing that, Eric. So that was an opportunity where somebody just happened to get dollars for printed material and told the rest of us, and we whipped it out. So another great case of quick, light-footed funding. We call that light-footed funding.
DSL, CLCD, you guys, anything else?
Did you learn anything today from us?
Absolutely, yeah, thank you guys for having us and happy to be part of the conversation.
Great.
Good work you're doing.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Closes the loop for us.
Yes.
Yes.
And everybody just can, keep Port Orford in your mind this week because we have police for Port Orford. And And, let's just hope that, you know, everybody's safe out there fighting that fire, and, there's a lot on the line here, so, it's rain dances. All right.
Yeah, we need rain and no wind.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good meeting, Erin.
Thank
you, Erin.
Yeah, thank you. And nobody leaves here without an apple and a plum, because I got a whole bunch of. Take them with.
Thanks, Courtney.
I promise to make it to the next one.
Okie dokie, I'm holding you to it.
Please do.
I don't know, you're like, you're
I know I
glitching
can
out.
help you in any way.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll text you.
Yeah.